The night is quiet, but the drama, oh darling, it's never been louder. You may have forgotten all about your favorite nighttime soaps, but Miss Kane, she never did. She's been watching all the affairs, the betrayals, and the big hair, and now she's here to tell you everything you missed, or perhaps just forgot. This is Drama After Dark. Slip into something comfortable, and let's catch you up.
Don't just watch the scandal, darling. Subscribe and join the drama every Friday.
If you're new here, darling, welcome to Drama After Dark. And if you've been watching with me for a while, well, it's good to see you again. Around here, we revisit the golden age of nighttime soaps, one episode at a time, the power plays, the betrayals, and the spectacularly bad decisions that made these shows absolutely unforgettable. Tonight, we're heading back to Southfork for another chapter of Dallas. So settle in, love. This one gets rather interesting.
Southfork's 14th annual rodeo brought far more than family tradition, darling. Sue Ellen, well, she found herself drawn to the quiet charm of a handsome cowboy named Dusty, much to JR's growing displeasure, you see. Never one to lose control quietly, JR, with a little help from Kristen and Alan Bean, carefully staged a public feud designed to lower Cliff Barnes' defenses and tighten the noose around his neck. Meanwhile, Bigger Barnes, quite convinced Little John is his grandson, sees the festivities as an opportunity to get closer to the child. But Jock's fierce pride and possessiveness over his family's newest heir may have pushed Digger dangerously close to old demons once again. At Southfork, even celebration has a way of turning into heartbreak.
Oh, honey, Miss Ellie, bless her heart. She starts her morning with a fear that all the Southfork money in the world just can't fix, can it? That quiet little call to the family doctor. Well, that ain't just for pleasantries, no. That's the sound of a woman trying to hold it all together, facing the absolutely terrifying possibility that her life, her precious life, might actually be in real danger. After finding that lump, every single unanswered question, darling, it just feels heavier, doesn't it? And for once, Miss Ellie's perfectly polished grace, it just can't quite hide the worry that's written all over her face. Watching Southfork's strongest woman just forced to confront something this deeply personal, it's enough to make even those grand halls of theirs feel a little colder, you know. And poor Jock, bless his oblivious heart, just carrying on with his breakfast and his routine. He hasn't the faintest, not the faintest idea that his wife, his dear wife, might just be walking into one of the most frightening moments of her entire life. Oh, the drama! Meanwhile, across town, JR, bless his heart, is waking up in Kristen's bed, looking like a man who's just realized he may have let his side arrangement get a touch too comfortable. Kristen, naturally, is already auditioning for the role of supportive little wife, fresh suits and all, but JR shuts that fantasy down faster than an oil well running dry, darling. Because while Kristen may be enjoying her morning after domestic bliss, JR's got bigger problems than coffee and flirtation, wouldn't you agree? Ewing oil is balanced on shaky financial ground, Southfork itself is tied up in the mess, and the pressure is clearly getting to him, though heaven forbid he ever admit it out loud. Kristen may know more than he'd like, but JR isn't about to surrender control now, is he? Though judging by how rattled he is before breakfast, the mighty JR may be feeling the heat more than usual. Back at Southfork, darling, Bobby and Ray are easing into the morning, still carrying the emotional leftovers of rodeo week. And Ray, in his usual, shall we say, rough-edged fashion, is finally forced to admit that Donna may mean far more to him than he once cared to acknowledge. For a man who spent plenty of time making poor romantic choices, this flicker of self-awareness is, well, almost refreshing. But their conversation soon shifts when Sue Ellen is once again spotted leaving Southfork unusually early. Another quiet departure, another vague explanation, and in this family, repeated secrecy is rarely meaningless. But the real emotional center of this hour, oh honey, belongs to Miss Ellie. Inside Harlan's office, Ellie confronts a fear no amount of wealth, grace, or family legacy can shield her from. Though the mammogram offers cautious reassurance by showing no immediate visible signs of cancer, Ellie knows what she's experiencing feels different. She's felt a change in her breast, a persistent lump, and more troubling still, discharge that cannot simply be ignored. This scene lands with devastating realism because Ellie isn't panicking. She's advocating for herself, you see. She knows her body, and despite the doctor's measured attempts to avoid unnecessary alarm, she refuses to dismiss what her instincts are telling her. Oh, Harlan, bless his heart, he proceeds ever so carefully, explaining that while many symptoms can prove benign, further testing is absolutely necessary. A fluid sample is collected for lab analysis, adding another agonizing layer to the uncertainty. And truly, darling, it's the waiting that often feels the cruelest, existing in that unbearable limbo between possibility and diagnosis. For Miss Ellie, a woman so often defined by strength and composure, being forced into vulnerability is quietly shattering. Beneath her calm exterior is the very real terror that her life, her future, and her role within this family may be facing an unimaginable threat. Meanwhile, Sue Ellen, she sits alone in a coffee shop, polished as ever, but clearly distracted. There's an air of quiet anticipation beneath her composed exterior, as though she's there for more than just coffee. And just as she asks for the check, prepared to leave, fate, or perhaps temptation, finally arrives. In walks Dusty Farlow. Suddenly, Sue Ellen's repeated little outings begin to look far less accidental and far more intriguing. Oh, Kristen! She finally sachets into Ewing Oil late, looking every bit like a woman trying to balance corporate professionalism with the fact that she absolutely spent the night with her boss. Business as usual, apparently. Connie's already handling calls, including repeated messages from Lowell Hansen, when Jock arrives looking for JR. And, honey, one thing about Jock Ewing, when he shows up unannounced, somebody's about to get checked. Moments later, in strolls JR, smooth as ever, acting like he hasn't got a single problem in the world. But once he and Jock head into the office, it becomes painfully clear Daddy didn't come for small talk. Christine delivers coffee and casually mentions Lowell Hansen's calls, which immediately catches Jock's attention. Now, Jock may let JR do his financial dance, but hearing Hansen's name tied to his son's latest business dealings clearly raises an eyebrow. JR, naturally, brushes it aside with his usual polished nonsense, downplaying it before Jock can dig deeper. But foreign investments aren't why Jock came. Oh, darling, he's there about Amanda's trust. And baby, Jock is done waiting. When JR starts fumbling for excuses, Jock wastes no time, making it clear he's prepared to handle it himself, right then and there. Call the lawyers. Call the accountants. Call the banks. Let's get it done. And honestly, you can almost see JR's internal panic, because this isn't really about Amanda. It's about what financial scrutiny could uncover if too many professionals start digging through Ewing Oil's tangled books. So JR does what he does best. He pivots. Suddenly, his hesitation is framed as concern for Miss Ellie, claiming he simply can't move forward with something this significant unless his mother knows the truth about Amanda first. Now, is this partly true? Perhaps. But let's not kid ourselves. This is also a masterclass in strategic delay. JR expertly forces Jock into an emotional corner, making him realize that before any trust can be created, he'll have to finally confess his long-buried secret to Ellie. And just like that, JR buys himself more time, while Jock leaves with the heavy burden of knowing tonight may bring one of the most difficult conversations of his marriage. Honestly, no one manipulates a crisis quite like JR. Oh, Miss Ellie finally tells Pan all about this private fear that's been quietly consuming her. And honey, it is absolutely heartbreaking. Beneath all these medical tests and this uncertainty is an even deeper terror, not just of illness, but of what that illness could mean for her marriage. Faced with the possibility of losing part of herself physically, Ellie fears losing Jock emotionally as well. She spent years beside a man she views as strong, proud, and deeply appreciative of beauty. And now, in one of her most vulnerable moments, she's forced to ask herself whether his love could withstand something as life-altering as serious illness. It's raw, it's painfully human, and far more devastating than she's willing to admit aloud. Pam, steady as ever, pushes her toward honesty, reminding her that a marriage built on trust simply cannot survive secrets, especially not ones this profound. Armed with courage she barely feels, Miss Ellie prepares herself to finally tell Jock the truth. But Jock, oh Jock, he gets there first. Instead of hearing Ellie's fears, Jock unloads a 40-year-old bombshell, Amanda, his first wife. A woman he divorced after she suffered a mental breakdown. And baby, Miss Ellie does not take this quietly. Oh darling, what begins as a mere shock quickly spirals into a whirlwind of outrage, betrayal, and, well, absolute emotional devastation. Because, you see, this isn't just some dusty old news of a long-buried marriage. Oh no, this is Miss Ellie realizing the man she trusted most withheld a massive piece of his past. And all this, while she's secretly wrestling with the terrifying possibility of her own health crisis. Worse still, all Ellie can hear is one horrifying implication. When Amanda became sick, Jock just left. So naturally, her mind races straight to the darkest place possible. If she becomes seriously ill, if her body changes, if she's no longer the woman Jock married, could he just leave her too? The fear, the anger, the betrayal, it all collides at once, and Miss Ellie absolutely unravels. She doesn't just sit quietly processing this revelation, oh no. She lashes out, she demands answers, and she storms off, shaken right to her very core. Her trust has been cracked wide open, and in that moment, Jock's attempt at honesty feels less like a confession and more like a blooming catastrophe. Poor Jock. He may have thought he was finally doing the right thing, but instead, he's triggered every insecurity Miss Ellie was already desperately trying to suppress. And honestly, darling, her reaction feels entirely justified. Because when you're already facing the terrifying possibility of losing your health, discovering your husband once walked away from a sick wife is about the worst timing imaginable. The absolute worst. Oh, darling, you won't believe it. Southfork's grand family dinner is completely derailed as Miss Ellie storms out of the den in visible emotional distress, with Jock chasing after her, while the rest of the family is left stunned in the living room. And let's be honest, seeing Miss Ellie lose her composure to that degree is enough to shake the entire house. This is the woman who typically holds Southfork together with such grace and quiet strength. So whatever just happened behind those doors is clearly far more serious than an ordinary marital spat. Naturally, questions start flying. But for once, even JR keeps his cards close. Bobby, ever the peacekeeper, tries to step in and offer support, but Jock is in no mood for help. Oh, he's frustrated, rattled, and clearly dealing with fallout no one else fully understands yet. Upstairs, Pam begins piecing together just how emotionally fragile Miss Ellie truly was, long before tonight's blow-up. She reveals the deeply personal secret Ellie shared earlier, the terrifying fear surrounding the lump in her breast, and the possibility, however uncertain, that her health may be in jeopardy. Suddenly, Miss Ellie's emotional state becomes far more understandable. This isn't just about one argument, is it? Oh, Miss Ellie, darling! She's been quietly carrying the unbearable weight of potential illness, invasive testing, and, my word, the terrifying fear of what serious medical changes could mean for her future. More painfully, she's been deeply anxious about how Jock might react if her body changes or her health declines. And Pam, bless her heart, realizing how vulnerable Ellie truly was, can't help but wonder if encouraging her to confront difficult truths may have added to an already overwhelming emotional burden. Bobby, meanwhile, reacts exactly as Bobby would, wouldn't he? With compassion, practicality, and such genuine love. His immediate instinct is reassurance. More doctors, more opinions, more solutions. And perhaps most importantly, he voices a truth that cuts through Miss Ellie's deepest fears. That love should not, simply should not, hinge on physical perfection. Though Bobby still doesn't know the full story behind his parents' explosive fight, it's clear something much larger is unfolding beneath the surface. What he does understand is that his mother is frightened, vulnerable, and facing something profoundly difficult. For the very next morning, Sue Ellen, darling, is back in full form, slipping questions between Silk and Suspicion while she and JR get dressed. And honestly, no one probes quite like Sue Ellen when she knows something's off. Still rattled by Miss Ellie's explosive reaction the night before, she presses JR for answers, hoping to pry loose whatever family bombshell he's clearly avoiding. But JR, naturally, is more interested in fussing over stained ties and damaged wardrobe than offering his wife any real information. Classic. The man could be standing in the middle of an emotional hurricane, and he'd still prioritize accessories over honesty. Still, Sue Ellen isn't fooled. She knows JR's avoidance is rarely meaningless, and her sharp observation that family turmoil could threaten both Southfork and Ewing Oil lands closer to the truth than JR would ever comfortably admit. Of course, being JR, he quickly reminds her of her precarious place in the family hierarchy, because nothing says loving husband quite like a thinly veiled reminder that your security is conditional, charming as ever. But Sue Ellen, darling, she has her own agenda. Once she arrives at the coffee shop, it becomes painfully obvious this is no spontaneous caffeine stop. No, darling, Sue Ellen is absolutely positioning herself. Carefully choosing her seat, timing her visit, and placing herself exactly where she's likely to be noticed. She's not openly chasing, but she is absolutely making herself available. And just as planned, Dusty appears. What follows is deliciously calculated flirtation wrapped in southern charm. Dusty makes his interest unmistakably clear, and for perhaps the first time in a long while, Sue Ellen is engaging with a man whose attention feels focused on her, not her marriage, not her status, not her usefulness to some larger scheme. Now, she may put on a polite show of hesitation, but let's be honest, Sue Ellen didn't orchestrate this little coincidence for nothing. After years of emotional starvation under JR's suffocating control, Dusty's easy confidence and genuine attention are clearly hitting a nerve. Sue Ellen may still wear the polished mask of Mrs. Ewing, but underneath, she's inching dangerously close to temptation, and perhaps enjoying it far more than she should. Honey, if you're watching and not subscribed, what exactly are we doing here? Right then, while JR continues quietly pulling strings behind the scenes with Alan Bean, keeping his larger political and business manipulations in motion, the real emotional devastation, darling, remains firmly centered at Southfork. Poor Bobby, worried sick about his mother, makes one more attempt to reach Miss Ellie, hoping she might finally lean on someone instead of carrying the world alone. But bless his heart, Bobby quickly learns that Miss Ellie is in no place for comfort. She's emotionally exhausted, deeply shaken, making it painfully clear that whatever burden she's carrying has become almost too heavy to share. Then the call comes, doesn't it? Harlan delivers the kind of news no woman wants to hear. Her pap test results are, well, suspicious. And just like that, Miss Ellie's worst fears come roaring back with full dramatic force. Oh, darling, any fragile reassurance she was clinging to, shattered, just shattered, replaced by the terrifying possibility that this may, indeed, be something far more serious. You can practically feel the panic tightening around her, and for perhaps one of the first times, Southfork's iron-willed matriarch looks truly frightened. Suitcase in hand, she seeks out Pam, not Jock, which, darling, says absolutely everything. Right now, Miss Ellie needs steady support, and Pam once again steps in with quiet compassion as Ellie prepares for what may be a life-altering hospital visit. Meanwhile, across town, Sue Ellen's therapy session takes an entirely different but equally revealing turn, doesn't it? What begins with her usual biting sarcasm and emotional deflection slowly unravels into something far more vulnerable. Sue Ellen finally admits she's become fixated on a new man, Dusty, and not simply because he's attractive, but because he stirs something in her she can barely process. After years of manipulation, trauma, infidelity, and emotional damage, Sue Ellen finds herself drawn to attention while simultaneously feeling disconnected from her own desires. And that, darling, is the true tragedy. This isn't some carefree flirtation, darling. Sue Ellen isn't swept away by lust. No, she's grappling with emotional numbness, longing, fear, and a desperate search for identity outside of JR's suffocating influence. She wants connection, but she barely knows herself well enough to trust what that connection should look like. Dr. Elby, to his credit, wisely reminds her that revenge, rebellion, or repeating old destructive patterns won't heal her. But Sue Ellen's final confession? Oh, it lands hardest of all. She doesn't even know who she is anymore. And honestly, darling, that may be the most revealing truth she's spoken yet. While Miss Ellie fears losing her body, Sue Ellen is quietly realizing she may have already lost herself. Oh, darling, while Southfork is just drowning in personal crisis, JR's carefully constructed political games, oh, they continue moving full steam ahead, don't they? And wouldn't you know, Alan Bean, he wastes no time cozying up to Cliff Barnes, presenting himself as both a useful ally and, well, an ambitious opportunist. Now, Alan may package this little congressional push as righteous revenge against JR, but let's not be naive, my dear. This man isn't driven by principle. Heavens no. He's driven by advancement. Cliff's hatred for JR simply provides a very convenient ladder. Alan's strategy is clear. Build momentum around Cliff, weaponize public support, and position himself close enough to power to rise right alongside him. And honestly, Cliff, bless his heart, he may be suspicious, but his ego is far too flattered to shut the door completely. Because while Cliff insists he isn't officially running, hearing that support is naturally forming around him is precisely the sort of validation a Barnes rarely ignores. Alan doesn't need Cliff's full commitment yet. He simply needs him not to stop the machine. And just like that, JR's fake feud continues doing exactly what it was designed to do. Meanwhile, over at the hospital, the emotional tension, well, it becomes almost unbearable. Miss Ellie is no longer entertaining comforting platitudes or outside opinions, darling. Her fear has hardened into raw emotional exhaustion, and by now, every suggestion that she tell Jock feels less like support and more like pressure she simply cannot bear. She is staring down surgery, suspicious test results, and the very real possibility that her life may be changing in ways she cannot yet control. At this point, Miss Ellie wants certainty, not advice. Pam, however, is reaching her breaking point. Because, for all Miss Ellie's strength, Pam can clearly see that carrying this alone is becoming unsustainable. And when Miss Ellie once again refuses to tell Jock, Pam makes a decision of her own. The moment she steps away, she heads straight for the payphone. And with one call, everything may be about to change. Pam reaches out to Bobby, clearly recognizing that this burden has grown too large, too frightening, and too urgent to continue protecting through silence. Whatever Miss Ellie may want, Pam understands that some truths are simply too serious to shoulder alone. Honestly, it's a bold move, but perhaps exactly what this family needs. Because between Miss Ellie's fear, Jock's ignorance, and mounting medical uncertainty, secrecy is becoming its own kind of danger. Miss Ellie is finally forced to face the cold, unvarnished truth she's been dreading for weeks. And true to form, she asks for it plainly. No sugarcoating, darling. No delicate reassurances. She wants to know exactly what happens if the worst-case scenario becomes reality. Dr. Harlan and the surgical team lay it all out. The cyst will be removed and immediately tested. But if cancer is found, far more drastic measures may be necessary. Lumpectomy, mastectomy, lymph node removal, every frightening possibility is placed directly in front of her. And Miss Ellie, with all the grace and quiet steel she's known for, makes one thing painfully clear. Her mind is already made up. If it's cancer, do what must be done. No hesitation, no waking her to reconsider. Because while others may still cling to hope, Miss Ellie has already spent sleepless nights, mentally preparing herself for the harshest outcome imaginable. She's terrified, yes, but she is also practical, resolute, and unwilling to waste precious time on denial. There's something absolutely heartbreaking about watching this elegant, deeply feminine woman calmly discuss losing part of herself in order to survive. Yet there's also tremendous strength in it. Miss Ellie is frightened, that she is not fragile. Then the Ewing men come rushing in. Well, once Bobby, JR, and Jock arrive at that hospital, darling, the emotional urgency shifts dramatically, doesn't it? Pam, bless her heart, once again serving as that steady hand in the middle of family upheaval, steps in immediately to provide answers before panic fully takes hold. And Jock, naturally, is singularly focused. All he wants is to get to Ellie. And when he finally reaches her bedside, the emotional devastation, oh, it deepens, you see. Jock is left confronting not only the terrifying possibility of losing his wife, but the crushing realization that she endured much of this fear, believing she couldn't safely confide in him. Miss Ellie's heartbreaking question, it just lingers over everything. If this is cancer, will he leave her the way he left Amanda? It's an emotional gut punch no amount of Jock's power, honey, can shield him from. Outside that hospital room, Bobby paces with worry, desperate for updates, while Pam, bless her, remains the family's emotional backbone. Even JR, who typically keeps his vulnerabilities buried under charm and control, appears visibly shaken by the gravity of what's unfolding. For all their wealth, their status, and their influence, the Ewings are reduced to something painfully human here, a family terrified of losing the woman who has always held them together. Well, honey, while those Ewing men are all gathered at Dallas Memorial, just gripped by fear and uncertainty, and the very real possibility of losing Miss Ellie, Sue and Darling is off in the saddle with Dusty, and the contrast, oh, it simply could not be sharper. Out on horseback, Dusty, bless his heart, he offers Sue Ellen something she's been starved for far too long. Freedom, not manipulation, not control, certainly not emotional warfare, just freedom. His flirtation, well, it may be playful, but beneath all that cowboy charm is something surprisingly sincere, truly. Dusty isn't trying to possess Sue Ellen. No, he's trying to remind her she's still capable of wanting more for herself. And for perhaps the very first time, in a very long time, Sue Ellen, she allows herself to imagine what more might even look like. Now, she's hardly ready to leap into another man's arms, and thankfully, she knows that. Her wounds are still fresh, her trust it's fragile, and JR's shadow, well, it remains impossible to ignore. But Dusty, he represents possibility, a life outside that suffocating cage JR has spent years building around her. Sue Ellen may not be ready to fly just yet, but she's clearly beginning to wonder what life could feel like with those ropes cut. Meanwhile, back at the hospital, reality remains devastatingly heavy. Jock emerges from Miss Ellie's room, visibly shaken, finally forced to confront the emotional wreckage left behind by both her medical crisis and his long-buried deception. Watching Miss Ellie wheeled into surgery, uncertain of what comes next, clearly rattles him to his core. For a man like Jock, who so often projects strength and certainty, this visible vulnerability lands hard. But even now, Jock still can't quite bring himself to fully explain the truth to Bobby. So naturally, that burden falls to JR. And let's be honest, when JR ends up being the family historian, well, you know things have gone spectacularly sideways, don't you? JR finally reveals the bombshell. Jock had a first wife. A secret marriage, a hidden divorce, and Bobby, understandably, is flawed. Because this revelation doesn't simply expose an old secret. It completely reshapes the way Bobby understands his parents' explosive fight and his father's past. Pam returns to Southfork, darlings, carrying the kind of fear no one, absolutely no one, should ever have to deliver. And before she can even begin explaining Miss Ellie's condition to Lucy, one question immediately rises to the surface. Where, oh where, is Sue Ellen? Lucy, of course, is blindsided. Poor dear. Pam does her very best to soften the terrifying reality, carefully explaining the surgery while balancing honesty with reassurance. But there's only so much one can soften when fear this large is looming, isn't there? And to Pam's credit, she doesn't lie to Lucy. She gives her enough truth to prepare her, because by now, everyone can feel that this may be more than a simple procedure. Meanwhile, back at the hospital, Jock receives the news he's been dreading. And it is devastating. Absolutely devastating. Harlan confirms Miss Ellie was right all along. Despite previous tests and cautious reassurances, there was cancer, small, hidden, and dangerously undetected by the mammogram. Oh, the cysts may have been extensive, but the true threat was there, quietly waiting. Miss Ellie's instincts, her fears, her relentless certainty that something was wrong, all of it was tragically justified. The mastectomy was necessary. Lord. For Jock, this is more than medical information. This is the crushing realization that his wife's worst fears have come true, and the woman he loves is about to awaken to a life permanently changed. And perhaps even more painfully, Miss Ellie had every reason to be afraid. Her body has been altered, her future has shifted. And now Jock must face the impossible task of proving that her deepest fear, that illness could cost her his love, will not define what comes next. This is an absolutely brutal emotional blow. Because while Southfork has survived scandals, betrayals, affairs, and financial warfare, this is something entirely different. This is survival.
Well, wasn't that deliciously messy? Miss Kane walked you through the drama, and trust me, the secrets are just starting to spill. But don't think it's over, darling. There's always another scandal waiting in the shadows. This has been Drama After Dark. Until next time, we'll be watching. We're you.